Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Dials and Chemicals. Uh, while I research turpentine and see whether any watch stores actually use it, I came up a lot with linseed oil mentioned along with turpentine. Normally these are used for painting restorations and linseed oil was heavily used. Now, obviously, dials aren't really paintings, and I fully expect it to be a flop. I got bleached linseed oil, and there's purified linseed oil and then bleached linseed oil. And basically, what it says is that the bleached one is the whitest one, purified one is more yellower, and the regular one is quite orangey. So this is the one for this task. Now, what I expect this to do, for example, you see here that I have an acetone image, and now I'm going to scratch the dial near this acetone and image the lacquer layer. And what I'm hoping to do is that maybe this oil will form another layer, a strong layer, and after it fully evaporates, and there will be a layer that kind of like homogenizes the dial's look. For example, you can see the lacquer cracks around here. Maybe it can fill those cracks as well. And let me scratch the dial. So you can see my new scratch now. This I scratched with a needle and damaged the lacquer layer. You get a lot of dials that were scratched by the screwdrivers of old watchmakers. And what I'm hoping is that you can see now the scratch in the glare and every issue in the glare, and after this linseed oil dries and completely evaporates, which I will probably hasten by blowing air on it with a hair dryer. I'm wondering whether the dial will improve and whether it will be actually in a usable state. If it's oily, obviously it won't be usable. And I'm going to use this cheap brush. I'm not going to use any of my expensive brushes, and just oil and come back. I ended up applying an enormous amount of oil. Didn't swipe the oil after I dipped, and there's quite a thick layer of oil on the dial now. Now, after the first application, you can see that there is a zone here that doesn't hold oil. I think that's because that I applied some chemical there before and it affected I think how oil reacts with surfaced. I'm going to watch my previous videos and see what I applied there. Let me just reapply a bit there and come back. Now, obviously, while the liquid is still on the dial, it looks good. You can see the previous imperfections disappear, and you get these dust filaments on the dial, and the imperfections in the glare are them. I wish I used a more softer brush, and this task definitely requires a soft brush. Now let's see what happens when you push air onto the dial. It's definitely not a good result pushing air. I'm pushing the imperfections stop away from the dial. Normally you don't see these, but for some reason the oil really amplified them. So maybe cleaning the dial with turpentine before the application and completely drying it is a good idea as a note. If this thing works obviously. I should have just blown the air from distance, not so close. I'm going to try to dry it, evaporate the oil and come back. I actually want to try this on matte black tiles. And matte black tiles that have stained in an uneven manner. Even if there is some oil damage to those dials, if it homogenizes the... I'm pronouncing the word wrong, but basically if it converts the patina to an even and pleasing manner, it will be a success. And originally these are all because that some watchmaker really abused these dials. Now in this case I'm abusing it, but I'm abusing it for science. But originally I don't think the owners or the watchmakers really valued these watches and damaged them so much. So I wish I had a test matte black dial, but they aren't very easy to find, and they aren't very easy to find for an affordable sum, sub $50 I guess. Currently this is looking very unappealing. Maybe I should have just used a dial stand and passively let it evaporate, but I want to see the worst case scenario of what happens. So maybe I will jig something up to hold the dial and then blow air onto it and come back. So this is my part dryer setup, mean dry cases here, and I placed the dial inside an oval sauce container and secured it. And now I'm going to blast it with not the hottest but a single level hot air, and just let it stay for maybe 15-20 minutes and see the result. I had this on the dryer for an hour and I increased the temperature to maximum and wind to maximum as well, and there's still some oil left on the dial, and you can see some unappealing patina on the dial as well. But interestingly, the gaps in the enamel are still filled. Now to get rid of it, maybe I can do a not deep, but maybe a turpentine wipe, or maybe at first I will just try to wipe it with a microfiber cloth and then dry it after wiping. So I wipe down the oil. You can see the microfiber cloth lines on it. But the base dial itself appears to be in good shape, and you can see the enamel cracks and the lacquer that ascended to a higher level, being filled with oil, and you no longer see those crack lines. However, obviously the glare isn't good. Uh, I'm going to try and dry it again for some time in this state after I improve the lines a bit more. Also, this style has the advantage of having unobtrusive dial indices, but I mean, if this method works, I think all of the furniture has to be removed at first because you definitely need to wipe that oil down. But so far, it's an unsuccessful trial, even though it filled those gaps. It's unclear whether if this is put inside the watch case, it's unclear whether this oil is going to evaporate and get on the crystal. So the result wasn't really bad, but it definitely isn't a good glare. You can see the oil swipes on the glare, and it didn't feel the surface scratch that I made myself. You can see it. Now I'm going to try to clean it with turpentine and see whether the filled enamel parts, sorry, not enamel parts, lacquer parts, survive the quick turpentine treatment, and whether the turpentine is going to restore the surface finish. So far, the only advantage of this method is filling those lacquer cracks. For example, when you clean with turpentine and when turpentine evaporates, you can still see those gaps. But with this method, after hours of drying, not hours but 2 hours, let's say, and those are still filled. So I have some turpentine here and just quickly shaking it in turpentine. No, this brush was extremely dirty. I wish I used a different brush now. So one note I have for myself is to never dip a brush, use brush in turpentine. You can see enamel piece cracking off from that location, which is also very bad. You have to save these and then reattach them. Now I'm going to pause and probably cycle this on another bottle to clean those glimmers, but interestingly it created a fogs stardust look on the tile. Definitely looks very good. It looks a bit like those mega quartz lapis lazuli, not lapis lazuli, but the sparkly dials. This is the result, by the way. The camera can't capture it well, but normally on a regular glare it looks well. And you can see the oil in the turpentine, the oil that was removed. And with a single cleaning cycle, the filled lacquer layer is still filled. But I'm going to clean it again with a clean turpentine. Actually, without turpentine, I just wiped it with the microfiber cloth, and you can see the end result here. And there is no oil glare, and the cracks are still filled. You can see the damage I made around 6 o'clock. It's obviously still damaged. It didn't affect my scratch much, but it definitely feels these lacquer cracks. These dials are often perceived as maybe weak, but I believe actually they are really, really strong. It's the reason uh, how they can withstand this much abuse. I mean, you can imagine how much watchmakers have abused them. You can follow this dial on my vlog, and I really did bad things to it, and it's still here. So the watchmakers must be tumbling them with regular parts, putting them upside down, and maybe mm, scratching them in different ways. You can see some gap in this viewing angle. But I'm surprised how it was able to get back to this level as well. I want to sniff it just a bit. It still smells a bit of linseed oil. Now at this point it's a long-term experiment. I'm going to wipe the glare parts here and just store it a bit inside a plastic container and just observe the dial. But for filling these enamel gaps, maybe it's a good option, but only putting it inside a watch case and observing it for a year maybe could decisively conclude. So far, this is the result. Thank you for watching and have a good day.